All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody, for the first video of 2019. So, in order to keep moving on the projects, I got parts in limbo for the race car. I got parts in limbo for the CNC machine. The truck is gone to the body shop to get some paint done on it. So, in order to keep going on something, we're going to go ahead and start putting the engine together for the truck. I got parts scattered everywhere for that, and that is currently the path of least resistance. So we're going to get the engine put together, get it out of the way, and at some point we'll get it on the ground, get it hooked up to the transmission so we can just drop it all in at one time, hopefully. Now, in this particular video, there's not going to be a whole lot of action. I'm going to kind of explain what we got going on. This is an L33 5.3 liter engine. This engine is unknown mileage, but I am going to rebuild it using just rings and bearings. It's still going to have the stock pistons, crank, rods, heads, all that good stuff. Now, what is done to the engine is it's going to have a Brian Tooley Stage 2 cam. It has some pretty heavily ported 799 heads, rocker trunnions, head studs, and a Trailblazer intake. And of course a big turbo. So the goal for this thing, it's going in my new S10. It's a square body S10, which you've probably seen in some of the other videos. It's going to have the Mega Squirt, the MS3 Pro Gen 1 on it, a 4L80E, which is sitting right down here. You may not be able to see it. And the goal is 1,000 horsepower to the wheels. I have enough turbo, I have enough fuel system, I have enough everything. It's just a matter of whether or not this thing will stay together. We're going to find out. So, follow along. It's time to clean some parts up and get ready to put the short block together. Alright, so just to show you what exactly we're going to do with this short block, and just to show you how bad a shape it was in. This piston is actually out of this engine. And if you look, it's just, it's caked up with trash in the ringlands. Just in general is really filthy inside. Also, just noteworthy is that the rod bearings and the main bearings in this engine, when I took it apart, were spotless. That's the things that I look for that really matter to me the most. The only thing we're going to deviate from as far as putting this engine back together from stock to hot rod is the ring gap. At big power levels, 1,000 horsepower to the wheels or so, the ring gaps are critical, and if you don't gap the rings, you will very likely knock the tops of the pistons off. So follow along. We're going to start getting that stuff cleaned up, like I said a minute ago, and have some fun. Check it out. We're going to get... Okay, so first and foremost, we're going to take the rings off of all the pistons, and we're going to get them soaking in some mineral spirits and try to break up some of that trash and crap that's on them. So we use these simple ring expander tools. I think these are Lyle. You can get these at like O'Reilly's or whatever. So the big purpose of these ring expander tools is so you don't tear up your fingertips, and it's no more than just getting a hold of the ring like that, and it comes right off and it goes flying across the shop. Same thing for this next one. As you can see, this ring is so stuck that the ring gaps aren't even exposed. So this may be one of the ones we have to soak in the parts cleaner for a little while to try to get that ring to free up before we can even get it off. The oil rings are easy. You just grab a hold of them with the pick. Put that thing over there. Now this piston, or this engine, had a broken piston at number 7. Big surprise there. It was in a truck, stock. Again, I don't know how many miles, and I don't know why the piston broke. Presumably bad gas or a bad injector or a combination of both. Maybe overloaded, pulling something heavy, pinging, bad knock sensors. Who knows? Who cares? But we're about to give it the thrashing of its life. So we'll keep plucking these rings out. Okay, so I got most of the pistons cleaned up, or all the pistons cleaned up with the wire brush, I should say, or the wire wheel on the grinder. Now, in my opinion, one of the things that causes these LS motors to lift the ringlands, especially on these high mileage motors, is the carbon buildup behind the rings. Okay, so imagine that the ring is not gapped. That's one problem. The other problem is the carbon buildup that gets behind the ring. The carbon buildup that gets behind the ring on the inside of the ring keeps the ring from collapsing all the way, and has even more force, or even more of the ring sticking out and allowing it to lift up on the ringland. That's just my theory. I don't know how much truth there is to it, and I certainly don't have any way to prove it. So that leads me to my next thing. When you clean the pistons up, when you're putting a motor together, particularly a motor like this, and you have some of the old rings laying around, you take one of those rings and you just break it right in the middle, okay? And you end up with a piece like this. You use that piece to clean the ringlands out with, and you just put the thing in there like that, and 9 times out of 10 it works better when you push away from you, okay? Push away like that, and you keep running that thing around, and it'll dig up all kinds of junk out of that ringland, particularly out of the second ringland, okay? Just run it on around, and sometimes it's kind of tough. It really depends on how clean or how dirty that engine was on the inside to begin with, which equates to how good a shape or how well it was taken care of. Now I'm going to bring this thing up close so you can see the junk that I just dug out of this ringland. Hopefully you can see it. Oh yeah, I think you can see that pretty good. See it sticking up right in front of the ring? So you just do that, breaks all that stuff loose. And there, come on, focus. Focus! Focus. Where are you? Come on, talk to me. There you go. Now you can see it. So you get all that stuff dug out, and you can even use that same ring, and you can do the oil ring groove as well, because it gets a fair amount of junk in there. Now you have to hit that one twice because it's a little bit wider than your top 2 rings. When you get all that stuff dug out, there's another piece in there. Yeah, see, it just keeps on coming out. When you get all that stuff dug out, sit that piston in mineral spirits for a while and get all that junk broke loose, because there's going to be some small trace amounts that you don't get. So take that, sit it in the parts washer for a while, and move on to some other kind of task. And when you come back to those things, you leave them in there for a few hours or overnight or whatever, you come back and you blow them off with the air hose, and all that stuff will just fall off of it. All right, so the next thing we're going to take care of, now we got the pistons cleaned up. The block has been power washed, but it hasn't been honed yet. So this particular block had some rust in the cylinders because the engine had sat outside and it got rain in it, I think. So a couple cylinders had some questionable pitting in it. And in most cases, I would say you really shouldn't use that. You should probably bore it, sleeve it, replace it, whatever. But being that I plan on making 1,000 horsepower with this thing to the wheels, I don't want it to be, I don't want a really nice engine, because if I tear it up, I won't be out a lot of money. So let's get this thing honed, and I'll give you a close-up of what that rust looks like and why I think it's going to be okay in this particular case. So we're just using your standard issue ball hone right here. I think this is a 120 grit, if memory serves me correctly. So there's no magic to this. I think the ring manufacturers say that they want like a 45-degree crosshatch in it. I think you'd be hard-pressed to prove that it did anything at 10 degrees or 45 or whatever. So let's just stick a hone to it. Okay, I'm gonna get this thing wiped out real quick, and then we'll do it close up so you can see what the hone looks like. Okay, there's one of the rust spots, and then there's the other rust spot right there. And then there, of course, is a good cylinder, and that's what it should look like. Okay, I'm not too terribly concerned with the rust stains that are down in the, a couple inches down in the cylinder. All the good stuff happens when the piston's at the top. Now the other one, number 2, I am a little bit concerned about that. I barely feel it with my fingernail. Worst case scenario, the engine smokes a little bit and we'll call it Old Smoky. That's about the extent of it. We are going to send it. It is going in the truck, and it is not going into the machine shop. So the show must go on. Let's continue. Okay, so the last big step in getting the engine ready to start actually putting stuff on it is filing the rings. There's lots of other things I would rather be doing than filing rings, like maybe going to the dentist or something like that. I don't know. I've already filed 7 of the cylinders, so I'm going to show you on the last set of rings. Hopefully I don't screw that up. And it's not hard. It's just it's kind of a pain, especially if you're using like a plasma moly top ring and a regular cast iron second ring. The plasma moly ring is really hard, and it takes a little bit of effort to grind it, and then, you know, check it and grind it and check it. And if you forget about it and you put the second ring in there, it's just cast iron and it grinds pretty easy. And it's real easy to make the gaps too big. Not that I've ever done that or anything. I'm just saying that I could see how that would be a problem. So I'm going to zoom in on the ring filer device, which is kind of modified. So yeah, check it out. Okay, so real quick, you can see there's 2 different kinds of rings there. The shiny one is the top ring, that's the plasma moly ring. The dull colored one is the cast iron ring, that's the second ring. So we're just going to put them in the cylinder. I'm going to square it up with a piston. And we're going to see just how bad the gap is. Should be around 20 thousandths, I think. Bingo, 20 on the money. Whoops. We're going to take the ring back out, take it over to the filer, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Now the clever eye might notice that this is a really cheap ring filer from Summit with the handle taken off and a drill put on it. Much easier that way. Helpful hint number 1778, I think. So typically speaking, you only file one side of the ring. Hold it up against the stop. Hold it up against the wheel as square as possible. And that is going to take quite a bit of material away. Square it up with the piston. There. Pick up the feeler gauge that you dropped. So we know it's over 20 and hopefully not over 30. Let's try 25. 25 is a little snug. 26 a little more snug. 28 is good. And 30 does not go. So we're going to call that one 28. Top or second ring. Repeat the process. Square it up with the piston. Check it with the feeler gauge that you did not drop this time. Should be in the 20 thousandths range again. Even tighter. This one's going to take a little more effort to file. $25. It's very tight and does not go all the way. I'll be right back. 28 on the money. We're done with that part. Okay, so we have all the rings gapped. They're installed on the pistons, and the pistons are ready to put in the bores. So now we're ready to start actually putting parts in this thing instead of taking parts out of it. And in this particular case, I've already set the crankshaft down in it, set the new bearings down in it. Everything's clean and all that jazz. Took some emery cloth to the bearing journals on the crankshaft, got it ready. and of course it looks good. So if for some reason you are following along on this and using this for information to build your engine, there is one big tip that you need to know about, and it is just a tip. The bearings that go in the block and the bearings that go in the caps are different, even though they look the same, and it's very easy to overlook. Don't forget to put that bearing in the cap, and the bearing that has a hole or a slot in it goes in the block. If you don't do it that way, the engine will not last very long. Don't forget it. Not that I've ever done that either. I haven't. So, crankshaft's in the block. I'm gonna snap the bearing halves in the caps, drop them in place. Gonna kind of just do a quick run them down, and then we'll torque them down later when all the rods and pistons are in. Okay, I've already snapped the bearings in the other caps. This is the middle cap, and this is the one that takes the thrust bearing, the one that's got the saddle on it on the sides. Whenever you put the bearings in, be triple sure that you check for burrs and high spots anywhere that the bearing is going to sit. And the other thing is, you shouldn't have to do anything to get the bearing in other than snap it in place. And in the event that you have to give it a little bit of help, screwdriver handle and a quick tap in place, and it's ready to go. Okay, so it's time to put the pistons in. When I took this engine apart, I actually stamped the top of the piston with the number of the hole that it came out of. So I stamp it in a manner where I know that that number goes to the front of the engine. There's no mistaking it and all that good stuff. So if you have one of these that you took apart, just be aware of that there is a front towards the engine, and it's not for the relation of the piston, but it's actually for the relation of this chamfer right here. That chamfer goes towards the radius on the crankshaft, not towards the other rod. If you should happen to get that wrong, the engine will run, and in some cases it'll last a long time. It just chews up the edge of the bearing. If it's really bad, it will actually grab a hold of the bearing and spin the bearing, and the engine won't last very long at all. So make sure you get that part right. So having said all that, if you don't have one of these tools right here, 3.780 ring compressor for one of these, it's probably one that you want to get. So we're going to install the pistons right now, and then we're going to call the short block complete. Okay, so this is the point where you probably want to get gloved up because it does get a little messy. I usually just use regular motor oil in a little squirt can like this. You don't want to put a whole lot of oil in the cylinder walls because the instant you turn the engine over, it just wipes it all away anyway. So put one little ring of oil to the top. It's going to run down the cylinder walls and drip all over your floor. And you're going to love it. I do use this kind of engine assembly lube on the bearings. Usually one big drop right in the middle, because just like everything else, as soon as you put the rod in there and tighten it down, it squishes most of it out anyways. You want to make sure and orient your ring gaps as far away from each other as possible. Okay guys, I think we'll call it quits for this video. We got the majority of the short block together. Normally I wouldn't have even rebuilt the engine. The bearings and stuff were good enough to run it again. The rings were just caked with junk, and with the rust in the cylinders and whatnot, it needed to be honed, so might as well do the whole thing. It's like I mentioned earlier, the goal is 1,000 horsepower to the wheels. It's nothing new. It's not revolutionary or anything like that. It's just just to do it. This is a budget build in some respects. It's not a built engine with badass rods and whatnot. There are still some expensive parts, so the budget part of it is just kind of up to your definition of budget. So having said that, again, it's the end of the video. I'm going to include some links down in the description for the things that I used in this video, because I always forget to do that. Also, email address, stuff like that. So if you guys got any specific questions, put it in the comments below, or shoot me an email. Outside of that, as usual, guys, thanks for stopping by. Be sure to tune in, subscribe if you haven't, give it a thumbs up and share it. This is going to be a lot of fun when this thing lands in the truck, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys. We will see you in the next video.